the time has come to finally talk about my top 10 worst movies of 2022. In the 2 years previous that we've been talking about movies, doing year-end lists, it didn't really seem that fun to make these lists. It's because the bad movies of 2020 and 2021 were really boring, and honestly, none of them were that bad. They were just kind of disappointments, movies that made me feel nothing, movies that were kind of just there and were nothing. 2022 was easily my favorite year of film for this decade so far, and I say that because there was a significant amount more of bad movies to talk about, but they were fun bad. They were like, you get to bash on them, and they were like silly, and but like it gave me stuff to talk about instead of just saying this was boring or this really was a mess or something like that. I don't know. I had a lot more fun compiling this list than I had in years previous. So that's always a good thing. I think it's always a good thing to have bad movies to talk about. I still have fun watching them. I still, am enjoying the process instead of mind-numbingly going through the year's boring movies. So without further ado, let's get right into the list. I'm going to roll a little thing of honorable mentions or dishonorable mentions, but they also will all be listed in the description down below. So yeah, other than that, I will see you guys at number 10. Coming in at number 10 is a Netflix original that came quite hot off the heels of this director's smashing success, Top Gun Maverick. And Top Gun Maverick, even though I was not a huge fan of that movie, will not be making an appearance anywhere near this list because it really wasn't that bad. I just personally dislike it. With this movie, though, it was a mess. Miles Teller gives such a odd performance, and what could have been a really cool little science fiction thriller movie fell flat on its head because of the all over the place script. Its attempts at humor and romance were so just forced and so out of the blue. You can very much tell it's a Netflix movie because it's throwing stuff at the wall and seeing if it will stick, and this movie really kind of embodies that process of ideas of just, let's just throw this at the wall, let's see if this sticks, see if this sticks. We have a cool concept, we have no idea how to flesh it out, so let's just cram as much into this movie as we can, and it really fell flat on its face. And I'm glad people are starting to realize that, hey, maybe he's not the next best director. I think he just kind of had a one-off with Top Gun Maverick, because SPIDERHEAD was pretty bad. A movie that I thought would be way higher on this list when first seeing it than it is now, we have Jurassic World Dominion. What a waste of a concept this was. I mean, dinosaurs roaming throughout the real world could have been and should have been the best Jurassic World movie we've gotten so far. I'm not talking about the original Jurassic Park. I don't think it could have topped that, but it could have been the best sequel to date. But it fell so flatly. I mean, me and Cameron saw it in a movie theater with people, and I fell asleep. I legitimately fell asleep for a good 20 minutes of this movie because of how unexhilarating it was, how messy all the storytelling was. It tried to tell a story of bugs and another evil corporation, and it took all of the wrong turns. This movie could have been incredible, at least some very dumb fun, but it was not. It was just another legacy character showcase with an unnecessary plot that really tarnished a great legacy. Like, this could have been a really good return to form after the awful Fallen Kingdom. It's not as bad as Fallen Kingdom. There's still little moments that save it from being really low on this list, but Jurassic World Dominion, I mean, I don't even know diehard Jurassic Park fans that like this movie. So yeah, definitely one of the biggest disappointments of this year. Number 8 is going to be a little bit of a controversial pick, but I did not like Steven Soderbergh's Kimi. I felt that it was very schlocky and very much a parody of his own style. I felt like it was way more style over any substance whatsoever, which again, kind of a running theme throughout this list is going to be cool concepts that fell pretty flat in execution, and this movie really embodies that. I really do like Zoe Kravitz's performance in this. I think that's the only thing saving this film from being utterly terrible, but I just found myself bored throughout most of this thing, and there were some laughably bad moments, especially towards the climax, where they really didn't know how to end things, so they were shoehorning in a character from the beginning of the movie that had nothing to do with the plot up until that point. And it felt like a very by-the-numbers Steven Soderbergh movie, and is going to get lost in his overall catalog because of how really not great it is. Like, go back and revisit this movie if you did enjoy it on first watch, and I see it through a new lens, because I, for one, really did not enjoy Kimi. We're starting to get to the really crappy ones here with number 7. We have Fantastic Beasts 3. Whew, this movie was hard to sit through. One, I'm really don't want to associate myself with the Wizarding World and all that crap just because of J.K. Rowling and all her shittiness. But this movie was just kind of the icing on the cake for that, because this sucked. It was a slog to get through. It wasn't even entertaining. The overall story, zooming out and looking at what the story she was actually trying to tell, is pretty problematic in its own right, and I don't really have time to talk about that in full here. Mads Mikkelsen is trying. He's really trying with this character, but I could not find myself to give a shit about a single moment in this movie. It felt just dead on arrival. I mean, I don't think anybody cared about this movie going into it, and it showed. It showed on the screen pretty badly, and thank God it'll be the last of the Fantastic Beasts movies. I am so happy for that, because this thing was probably the worst of them yet. At number 6, we have The Bubble, and this was just a very poorly executed Netflix comedy. It's said to have been semi-based on what happened with the filming of Jurassic World Dominion, and while this could have been a very funny concept, once again, it was Netflixized, which I like to say, and its presentation was utterly boring. The jokes were borderline even jokes. They were not funny, and it was just a miserable experience to sit through. It felt like famous people saying, "Oh, look at how bad we had it during the pandemic. Feel bad for us. This was horrible." And it just was in such poor taste, I think. Pedro Pascal, he's the... I feel like I'm repeating myself with some of these picks, but he was the lone thing that I liked about this movie, and even he couldn't save The Bubble, because, wow, it was pretty unwatchable at points. This one was pretty bad. My number 5 pick could be seen as kind of an easy target here. It's a Hotel Transylvania movie. It's the 4th in the franchise. Barely any of the original casts returned. A lot of it was an Amazon Prime original. It seems like a pretty easy target to most people. But for me, why it was so bad, and why it ended up landing at number 5 on this list, was because of how good the other Hotel Transylvania movies are. I legitimately think those are some of the best popcorn family films that have come out in the past decade. I really think a lot of effort was put into them. I think the people who worked on them cared about putting out a quality product, even though they were still, Sony animated movies. This one, there was not a single ounce of care. I guess there was no love with this movie. It just felt so stale and so repeated and so watered down, and just obnoxious for the sake of being obnoxious. Like, the first 3 movies, I'm not going to say they're like cinema or anything like that, but they weren't trying to actively be annoying to pander to the smallest demographic possible, and I feel like that's what this movie was really trying to do. It was trying to hold itself in a box of being a family film first, and I think it really failed at that. Number 4 is a movie that I don't think a lot of people will remember. It's Choose or Die, a Netflix movie from a while back, and it was funny. This is where we get to the part of the list where it's funny bad, because this movie was hilarious to sit through. It was not scary. It was not thrilling. It had a Goosebumps premise that failed on even being a good Goosebumps, like, what's that word, homage, because this movie is basically just one long drawn out bad Goosebumps story that was trying to be edgy and was trying to have a lot of shock horror. That was just kind of hilarious. This movie was actively making me laugh throughout, and a lot of this more serious tone and the hard hitting real life problems that these characters go through. It's very silly, and I genuinely had a good time watching it, but not in the right way, because this thing was funny bad. Starting to get to the top of the list. We're starting to get towards the just utterly abysmal movies, and number 3 is Firestarter. For some reason I had hopes for this thing. I was like, maybe this could be cool. You know what? Maybe this is the kind of schlocky horror film that I need at this moment. And it was not. It was, I think it was PG-13, which didn't make a lot of sense, because why would you tell this kind of story in that way? Zac Efron is scary looking in this movie. Like, something about his face is, that's besides the point. It was just bafflingly awful. Like, they made poor decisions at like every turn, and the editing was horrible. They didn't go into any explanation into how her powers actually worked, or why her family was doing the things that they did. They just kind of vomited out a story of this girl that sometimes set things on fire and set her home on fire one time. It just felt like a rights retaining movie where they're like, shit, we have to put out a Firestarter movie or we'll lose the rights to this. Let's think of something. Let's just put something out there. Let's just do it. Let's make a Firestarter movie with Zac Efron in it. Bam. And then they did it in a weekend. That's what this movie really felt like to me. And it was another laughably bad one, because yeah, there were moments where I was hysterically laughing during this movie. Our runner-up is everyone's favorite movie of last year, Morbius. This thing, God, what a movie Morbius was. Again, another one to think. I was excited for Morbius. I wanted to see this movie. I was genuinely curious to see what an on-screen Michael Morbius would be like, and wow, did they butcher it. I mean, this is one of the worst superhero movies to have come out in decades. This thing feels like it was ripped straight out of 2002 in all of the wrong reasons. I was expecting like a Papa Roach song to start playing at points. I mean, where to even begin with Morbius that hasn't already been said? Maybe Jared Leto's awful performance, maybe the really wishy-washy storytelling, maybe the awful villain arc, maybe the editing, maybe the hilarious dialogue, maybe the really shoehorned in tie-in to the MCU at the end, maybe that I had to spend $40 for me and Cameron to see this on opening night in IMAX, maybe how this movie genuinely gave me a panic attack while watching it. I don't know why that happened, but yeah, this Morbius. That's all I'm gonna say. Morbius. It wasn't the worst movie of 2022, but it tried. It tried its absolute hardest to be, and even failed at that. Finally, our number 1 pick, a movie so bad it beat out Morbius. Disney's live-action Pinocchio. This movie was insufferable. I hated every second of this film. From Tom Hanks's Geppetto to the awful songs to how obnoxious both Pinocchio and Jiminy Cricket were, how it felt so plastic and so hollow and so just like, it felt like a giant FU to Guillermo del Toro and his version of the movie that was coming out. It just kind of felt like Disney was being like, you can't do that. This is our story. Let's prove it with this really awkward and poorly edited and poorly written and poorly told live action remake. it was, I mean, words cannot even describe how much I hate this movie. This isn't even a funny choice. Like, I wasn't enjoying any minute of this film. It genuinely took me about around 20 tries to fully finish this thing because it was that bad. It was painful to sit through. I barely survived this. So yeah, easily my least favorite movie I saw in 2022, and not something I ever really want to revisit or ever talk about again. So I'm glad that we're done with the 2022 Pinocchio. So that's it. That is my worst movies of 2022. We yet again come to the end of another year and get to just wash out the bad movies, get to leave them behind and never watch them again. So I hope you guys enjoyed watching this video. Me and Cameron's best list will be coming out in due time, I hope. That list usually takes a little bit longer to make. But this is the more silly one. This is the one where I kind of just get to let out frustration of some bad movies that I saw. So thank you guys for watching so much. And, you know, if you like this kind of content, subscribe, like, please comment your list of your least favorite movies of 2022. And I will see you guys in the next review.